Conspiracy forums have been set ablaze this week after a lady claiming to be a former NASA employee said she had seen humans on Mars. The woman, named Jackie, called into American radio station, Coast to Coast AM, with a confession that she had witnessed suited men running on the Red Planet in 1979. Jackie said she was working as part of a downstairs team downloading telemetry from a Viking lander when she saw the humans via live feed. "I wonder if you could solve a 27-year-old mystery for me," she asked the presenter. "That old Viking rover was running around. Then I saw two men in space suits, not the bulky suits we normally used, but they looked protective. They came over the horizon walking to the Viking Explorer." NASA has not corroborated the story, but this hasn't stopped conspiracy theorists from claiming it as evidence for a secret space program. According to Jackie, 6 other NASA workers saw the two humans walking on the Red Planet's surface. "We ran upstairs but they locked the door, and taped paper over the door so we couldn't see," she said. "My question is, were they our guys?" The Viking Mars mission was performed by 2 spacecraft, Viking 1 and Viking 2, launched within a couple of weeks of each other in the 1970s. Each spacecraft consisted of an orbiter and a lander, which traveled attached together for nearly a year to reach Mars orbit. The orbiters then began taking pictures of the Martian surface, from which a landing site was selected. The landers then separated from the orbiters and soft-landed. Earlier this year, physicist Dr. John Brandenburg said he believes an ancient civilization on Mars was wiped out by a nuclear attack from another alien race. Dr. Brandenburg says ancient Martians known as Sidonians and Utopians were massacred in the attack, and evidence of the genocide can still be seen today. Back in 2011, the scientist first postulated that the red color on Mars could have been due to a naturally occurring thermonuclear explosion. The Martian surface is covered with a thin layer of radioactive substances including uranium, thorium, and radioactive potassium, and this pattern radiates from a hot spot on Mars, he told Fox News at the time. A nuclear explosion could have sent debris all around the planet. But since then he has advanced his theory to the level that he now no longer thinks it was a naturally occurring explosion, but rather one planned by an intelligent alien race. According to Vice, the conclusion of his latest paper says that nuclear isotopes in the atmosphere resembling hydrogen bomb tests may present an example of civilization wiped out by a nuclear attack from space. The orbiters continued imaging and, between Viking 1 and Viking 2, imaged the entire planet at what was then high resolution. Although no traces of life were found, Viking found all elements essential to life on Earth: carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus were present on Mars, said NASA. There are a few problems with Jackie's testimony, Nigel Watson, UFO expert and author of the book Haynes, UFO Investigations Manual, told Mail Online. Firstly, the Viking landing craft did not send a live TV feed back to Earth, and as its name suggests, it simply landed on the Martian surface. It did not have wheels like the latest Curiosity craft. Her grasp of technological terms seems hazy, and of course by remaining anonymous it is virtually impossible to know if she really worked for NASA. The story does however strike a note with conspiracy theorists who believe that NASA and other human agencies have secretly visited Mars and established colonies there. Other conspiracy theorists who believe the moon landings were faked, note that Jackie might have inadvertently seen the fakery behind the Viking missions, said Mr. Watson. Officially, the 2 Viking landing craft touched down on Mars in 1976, but according to this viewpoint they were set up at a remote desert location and Jackie accidentally saw a feed revealing this fakery. The missions are fake to hide the real activity going on in outer space, which could include collaborating with aliens who already live on Mars. Jackie's claim follows a similarly bizarre theory by physicist Dr. John Brandenburg, who believes an ancient civilization on Mars was wiped out by a nuclear attack from another alien race. Dr. Brandenburg says ancient Martians known as Sidonians and Utopians were massacred in the attack, and evidence of the genocide can still be seen today. He claims his theory could explain the Fermi paradox, namely why, if the universe is abundant with life, we haven't heard anything from anyone else yet. He warns, though, that we need to be fearful of an attack on our own planet, and should mount a manned mission to Mars to know what we're up against. According to this conspiracy theory, a manned mission to Mars took place in 1973 and no one was told about it. It wasn't even the first and it wouldn't be the last one. But first, the circumstances that led to astronauts setting foot on Mars. After successfully landing man on the Moon, NASA and the U.S. Department of Defense initiated Project Horizon, an ambitious mission to set up a permanent stationary base on our satellite. In the following years, a similar project received funding, but its destination was millions of miles away. Codenamed Project Redsun, its aim was to successfully colonize the Red Planet. The first mission saw 3 astronauts taking the journey aboard a modified Saturn V left over from the discontinued Apollo program. Since Project Redsun was a joint operation between the US and the USSR, a Soviet cosmonaut accompanied the 2 famous American astronauts Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. The rocket was launched from a secret and absolutely isolated zone in Brazil. The absolute secrecy such a mission would require meant the entire affair was kept under a tight lid. Mission control was established at Cocoa Beach, Florida, and it governed Project Redsun's first 3 launches. All subsequent missions were moved to and administrated from Area 51. The first interplanetary flight arrived at its destination towards the end of 1971 and served as a reconnaissance mission. By that time, a second trip was already scheduled. The launch took place on August 28, 1973. The crew aboard the ISV Columbus consisted of Elliot See Commander, William.B.Rutledge Pilot, and Vladimir Ilyushin. The 3-minute clip below this video was supposedly leaked from a collection of 16mm archival footage used in the training of NASA astronauts and Air Force pilots. It shows astronauts aboard a spacecraft distancing itself from Earth as well as the arrival on the orbit of Mars. The details on the surface of the Red Planet are visible during the orbital flight. While the authenticity of this clip was called into question, the idea that NASA sent manned missions to Mars is heavily vehiculated among conspiracy circles. In April 2011, more information regarding this subject was revealed by Italian journalist and UFO researcher Luca Scantumberlo. During a press conference, he presented a testimony outlining the details of Project Redsun. I introduce to you a press release testimony I have written to discuss the presumed existence of a hush-hush military space program called Project Redsun, carried out in the 70s of the last century to build a stationary base on Mars, the Red Planet. My source of information named by me Bravoxura24 has contacted me by email. It is possible to reproduce the pages of the press release, and the picture here presented as well. Since we're allowed to show it, here is the 3-page document released by Scantumberlo.